down on. And in fact, over 100 drivers were ticketed for using the shoulder to bypass traffic. And they did this in just a few hours. They also used their new helicopter to do some of this. So we will be talking to the sheriff about this enforcement. They've also stated that they will have another one of these enforcements out again because it was so successful. It happens all the time. I've seen it numerous times. And if you're watching and you are a driver, there is no doubt that you have seen it. When traffic is slowed down, some people just don't have the patience and they're using those emergency lanes. And we know that is in fact illegal. So we're going to talk to Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart coming up a little later on the show. We're also tracking and waiting for President Donald Trump to speak. This is within the White House. That is what you're looking at right there. You can see the press filling those seats, waiting for this press conference to unfold. And here's what we know. President Trump has been meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump is pushing for peace, of course, hoping to reach a ceasefire deal, a peace agreement in Gaza. And let me just give you some of the key points of what we know this is all about. Okay, so in terms of the framework for ending the war in Gaza, we know that Trump has pushed forward a 21-point peace proposal. Among some of what is in all of that, ceasefire, release of hostages, and he wants to dismantle Hamas. We also know that there's also a call for international oversight for Gaza. This is all coming from Trump. We know Arab states are pushing Netanyahu to support the U.S.'s plan and warn against annexation of the West Bank. They do not want to see the West Bank annexed. And we also know that they're stressing that that would undermine normalization prospects. Netanyahu has faced domestic pressure from his far-right partners to continue military operations rather than make major concessions. Trump signaled opposition to the West Bank annexation. So, of course, we are waiting to see exactly what is said when both of them take to the microphones out there in D.C. at the White House. Maybe there will be an announcement of a possible peace agreement. That is something that we are waiting on. This is in the state dining room inside the White House at this hour, and you see more people coming to fill those seats. So possibly that means this is going to start up soon. We know this was supposed to get started at 12:15, and we are now still waiting to see exactly what happens. We want to try to stay with this because as more people fill the room, maybe that is a sign that President Donald Trump and also Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are going to be entering in that room pretty quickly, trying to see. They signaled that camera to go towards that door, trying to see what's going to happen here, if it's the possibility that they're coming in the room. You see the photographer testing out his camera, so it is very possible that this is going to get started. It's almost an hour behind, so hopefully it does get started, and we will take that live right here on Chicago Now. It'll be interesting to hear that conversation. So again, we are waiting for that to get started. We know that President Donald Trump is hoping to push for a peace agreement in Gaza, and we'll hear if that happens exactly what that agreement will look like. So we are waiting on that to get started. We've also been following the stocks, right? Everybody's looking at the stock market to see how the stocks are reacting to anything. Anytime something goes on in the country, the stocks react. And you do see down just a little bit, not by much, but a little bit to start this Monday. So we're watching that as well. We have a lot coming up on this newscast, including, if you've been watching the news, you've heard about what happened in the state of Michigan. It's actually in Grand Blanc Township, which is about 15 minutes away from Flint, Michigan. And that is where they had a church attack. A shooting happened there. We know that 4 people are dead, including the shooter, 5 people. And so we are going to talk to a reporter on the ground there. There was a press conference that wrapped up not too long ago. We know as of yesterday, no motive was clear. So it will be interesting to see exactly what she learned from that press conference, any new insight into exactly why this happened in the first place. So stick with us right here on Chicago Live. We're waiting again for the press conference to start up with President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, we know that President Trump has been pushing for peace and looking for a peace agreement in Gaza. We're waiting by, you see the media there on the ground in the state dining room. They're waiting too for this press conference to get started. Stay with us. We'll have much more right after this break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Again, we are waiting on a press conference to get started with President Donald Trump and also Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We have watched this room fill up quickly. This is in the state dining room of the White House. So we are expecting both of them to take to the podium and hear exactly what they have maybe reached an agreement on. It could possibly be a peace agreement in relation to Gaza. Of course, we are waiting to hear more on that. We know the war started October 7th of 2023 and has definitely had a lot of bloodshed. So it will be interesting to hear exactly what comes out of this meeting. So we're watching that and waiting for them to approach that podium. So as soon as that happens, we will bring it to you live right here on Chicago Live. In the meantime, we do want to go to the United Nations General Assembly. This is week 2 in New York, where they are continuing to have talks there, talking about a variety of things. Last week, we listened to leaders really express what they want to see for their country. We have someone speaking right now, and we want to listen in. Let's take it.
Timor-Leste hosted the regional conference of the United Nations Special Committee on Decolonization. This meeting had profound significance for the committee and for all who value self-determination, democracy, and human dignity. Holding this conference for the first time on Timorese soil allowed participants to witness our example as a success story to renew collective hope for freedom and solidarity, reaffirming the crucial role of the United Nations in defending peoples. That same week in Delhi, we hosted the first Asia-Pacific Solidarity Conference for Western Sahara. The voice of the Sahrawi people, silenced for half a century on the international stage, needs and deserves our attention and our collective strategic action. Timor-Leste's connection with the history of Western Sahara is of a moral nature. The words of our Prime Minister, Kai Rala Shanana Guzmão, the suffering of the Sahrawi people was a lesson for Timor-Leste when we decided our own popular constitution since the postponement in 1992 of the referendum promised to Western Sahara marked all those who dreamed of independence. As the suffering of the Timorese people came to an end before that of our brothers and sisters, we will always in this House and in every forum of dialogue be amplifiers of the right to self-determination of Western Sahara, calling for a collective resolution of the conflict. Drawing on its own experience of occupation and prolonged suffering, Timor-Leste continues to advocate for dialogue, mediation, and multilateral engagement in the pursuit of peaceful, lasting, and sustainable solution as the path to peace. Timor-Leste therefore welcomes the overwhelming adoption on 12 September of the New York Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of the Middle East and implementation of the two-state solution. Timor-Leste recognized the State of Palestine in 2004, 2 years after its own independence. We did not, however, imagine we would witness the conflict escalating to the tragic proportions we see today. It is urgent to implement the roadmap set out in the adopted declaration, in particular, an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state with the support and collaboration of the international community, as well as the disarmament of Hamas and the normalization of relations between Israel and neighboring Arab states, in order to guarantee collective security in the region. Even more urgent is the response to the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. After the situation of famine and genocide in the region was officially declared, we must waste no more time on terminology. Despite the clarity of the reports, the world demands the immediate unblocking of large-scale humanitarian operations and the guarantee of security and respect for human dignity in the delivery of international assistance. We are, however, deeply concerned that the intensification of Israel's military offensive in Gaza.
You've been listening in to the United Nations General Assembly. This is week 2 of hearing all of these different prime ministers take that microphone and really speak about the position that they want their country to go in. We are waiting again to hear more from our president, Donald Trump. It looks like this is about to start. You see those cameras going up. This room has filled completely up in the last 12 minutes. This is inside the White House, the state dining room, where President Donald Trump is supposed to appear with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We know that Trump is hosting the Israeli Prime Minister. This is what we're expecting, at least, is to hear more about a possible peace agreement in Gaza. We know that Trump has been pushing for that, and we are waiting to see. Looks like they are getting their cameras ready, so maybe they are about to walk into the room. We are waiting to see and hear exactly what the president and also the Israeli Prime Minister have been discussing. Again, we do know that Trump has pushed a new peace plan to end the war in Gaza. He ultimately wants the hostages released, a ceasefire, and limits on Israel's expansion. Now, let's talk about what Netanyahu's position is in all of this. He's under a lot of pressure at home to keep fighting and not make big compromises. Some far-right allies oppose any ceasefire or deals with Hamas. Netanyahu did not fully agree to Trump's plan yet, at least prior to them walking into the state dining room. So we will have to see exactly what is said when they take those microphones. But before all of this meeting happened, this, I guess, press announcement happens, what we do know is that Netanyahu did not fully agree to Trump's plan yet. Now, they may come to this microphone, and this may be a completely new conversation. Now, Arab countries like the UAE support Trump's plan and warned Israel not to annex West Bank land. So we'll have to see what comes out of that. Netanyahu made a rare apology to Qatar over an airstrike. We know that happened in Doha, showing he may be open to softening his tone. So we will have to hear, again, exactly what happens. This was supposed to happen at 12:15. An hour later, neither leader has come into the room yet. We are waiting to hear more from both of them. But let's talk about the key tensions here, really what's at stake. Israel's, I should say, military actions in Gaza continue. They're still ongoing. And Trump is trying to balance support for Israel along with global pressure to protect civilians, because we have seen a lot of civilian casualties. There's a risk that without an agreement, fighting will continue and normalization with Arab states will collapse. So that's what's at stake here. More lives lost and really uncertainty there. So again, we are waiting to hear more to see exactly what will happen when they both take the microphone. Again, we're waiting to hear from President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We're going to continue to watch this room inside the White House. This is the state dining room. And with that, we'll be right back. So again, you are joining us on Chicago Live. We were looking at beauty shots of Chicago. 600 miles away, we are watching the state dining room, though. This is in the White House, where we are expecting President Donald Trump to take the podium there and answer questions from the media. Alongside him will be Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We do know that President Trump is pushing for a peace agreement in Gaza. We know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing some pressure of his own. And some people have interest in this. They do not want to see a peace agreement. So it will be interesting to see exactly what both sides have to say. We're waiting on this to get started. Supposed to start at 12:15, an hour later and some change, and this has not started yet. Of course, we'll bring it to you live when it does happen. In the meantime, we do want to go back to the United Nations General Assembly. This is the second week where we've seen leaders from around the world take to the podium and really give their position on what they want to see for their country. Let's listen in.
Above all others. Chief among them, peace and security. Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and the many forgotten ones. The clear message was, member states must do more to stem the tide of war and violence, to protect and feed starving civilians in Gaza, to return to peace to Ukraine, to protect women and girls in Sudan. This organization is only as strong as our collective will to uphold the principles of our Charter and international law. And when we do, progress follows. Monday's high-level international conference on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine demonstrated clearly that what happens in this hall matters. The conference, coupled with the New York Declaration, showed diplomatic movement on an issue long considered immovable. But while we are gaining traction politically, on the ground, the situation remains catastrophic and unacceptable. We should not delude ourselves. The real test now is whether the momentum generated here can be translated into tangible, short-term measures in and for Gaza. An immediate ceasefire, a surge in humanitarian aid for the civilians, the immediate release of the remaining hostages, and lay the foundation for a peaceful, long-term perspective, the realization of the two-state solution. The only way to achieve lasting peace, security, and dignity for both Israelis and Palestinians. The Charter is not only a blueprint for peace.
All right, so we are now looking at the room inside the White House, the state dining room there. You see Vice President J.D. Vance has just walked into that room. Again, we are waiting on the conversation that President Donald Trump will have with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A lot of people are hoping to hear that a peace agreement in Gaza has been reached. More people have filled this room, Paris, so we're expecting to hear more as we continue to watch it. We will be watching that as soon as something happens there. We will bring it to you live.
Interesting to see the president's son-in-law there, Jared Kushner. And apparently the contours of this deal involve Qatar as a broker, the other country there in the Middle East. Netanyahu, as far as every report, has not agreed to it. And, you know, I think we'll see what he has to say here. If it's more like kind of equivocating language, right, it would probably mean that that he's probably not on board with it. Obviously, the president hopes to get him to agree to a deal. A ceasefire is a big accomplishment if that can happen. Although, you know, is that something that could last? Is that trustworthy? Is that reliable? It doesn't seem like it, you know, just given how long this has gone on, how bitter this has gotten. And I have to say, you know, Israel, which used to have complete support in the U.S. on both the left and the right, has started, I think, in the far left and the far right. Clearly, they're done, you know, with Israel. You can see some of these commentators that are, I think, in the fringes of the left and right. And obviously, some of them always have been skeptical of Israel. But now you have other countries, like Canada, is saying we want to recognize a Palestinian state.
Right.
And that is the last thing that Netanyahu wants to hear. He doesn't believe in a Palestinian state. He says that would be the end of the Jewish state then, if that would happen. But so it's so fraught, and there's just so much opposition now. The UN, a UN commission is called the way that Netanyahu is carrying out this war as a genocide. Now there's controversy over whether it should be called that, and we had the Israeli consulate, consul general. He's a new guy in Chicago, to the Midwest. Consulate general of the Midwest basically saying, well, what happened on October 7th, 2023? Isn't that a genocide? 1,200 people were killed simply for being Jewish or Israeli. So, this gives you a sense of how far apart people are on this.
What do you think both sides need to come out and say at this point? I mean, I know there's thoughts that, I know Trump wants this peace agreement. Netanyahu, it sounds like, again, like you said, has not completely agreed to all of this. We do know he apologized for the airstrike in Doha.
He did. He apologized for the airstrike in Doha, right.
What are we expecting, both sides to say? Because they're trying to appease the masses here.
Yeah. If it corresponds with what the Prime Minister said at the United Nations, I think his whole trip here is about trying to stir up more support for Israel and trying to remind people why he believes they should support Israel, and what had happened on October 7th and why the war is going the way they're going. And by the way, the Consul General told me, in what genocide do we give food and warnings to folks? Now, their position has been that they have allowed aid through, that they have given aid. There's some dispute over that. We're not there, so we don't know for sure. Right. So I would anticipate that that's what Netanyahu is going to do, is continue this push for, why people should be on the side of Israel here.
Do you think, depending on what is said here, we have seen a decent amount of protest here at home, within Chicago, within the suburbs, surrounding areas, but also really across the nation? Do you think, depending on what is said here, that we will see more protests?
Yeah. I think that this will always kind of go on as long as this conflict is going on. There's strong passions here,
right.
Both on both sides, obviously, as we've seen, and I've watched both sides have some of their darker elements to them. Some of the anti-Semitic things being said on one side, and then on the other side, some of the perhaps anti-Muslim things that are being said. And it looks like they are getting ready to. It's going to be very interesting.
Let's listen in.
Big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. We're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East, and let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. So this is far more than anybody expected, but the level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible, incredible. Every single one of them. This afternoon, after extensive consultation with our friends and partners throughout the region, I'm formally releasing our principles for peace, which people have really liked, I must say. And these are done not just routinely done, these are done with total consideration and working with the nations that we're talking about. All of these nations have made contributions to those suggestions. I want to thank the leaders of many Arab and Muslim nations for their tremendous support in developing the proposal, along with many of our allies in Europe. Europe has been very much involved, and as I was called by many of the European leaders, most of them saying, is this true? Are you really doing peace in the Middle East? This is the most incredible thing we've heard. Some think it's the biggest thing they've ever heard. They called just to find out, was it just a rumor or is it actually done? And then they said, have you spoken to the Arab leaders? Have you spoken to all of the other leaders that we have to get? A lot of people involved in this one. I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region. And I want to just say that my meetings and dialogue that we had with so many countries, Saudi Arabia as an example, the king is a phenomenal person. The Emir of Qatar, he's incredible people. UAE, and that's MBZ and ABZ. We're totally involved. These are the people that we've been dealing with and who've been actually very much involved in this negotiation, giving us ideas, things they can live with, things they can't live with. Pretty complex. I mean, after 2,000, 3,000 years, whatever it is, I guess it's got to be a little complex, or it would have been done a long time ago. The King of Jordan was with us, as you know, in the United Nations. The President of Turkey, President Erdogan, is a friend of mine, a strong man, but a good man. President of Indonesia, somebody who's an amazing leader, Prabowo. He is an amazing leader and respected by everybody. He was in the room with us. We were together with most of these people that I'm mentioning. Others were by phone or the next day. The Prime Minister and the Field Marshal of Pakistan, they were with us right from the beginning. Incredible. In fact, they just put out a statement that they fully believe in this pact. It just came out just as I was walking around. They said, sir, you have a big notice from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and from the Field Marshal that they back this 100%. President El-Sisi of Egypt, who's terrific. And these are people I've gotten to know over the years. I mean, I would say it started around 2015 and then went into 2016 when the presidency officially began. But I've known him actually for a long time, and there are many cases really great men. I can't say in all cases, but I will tell you in many cases they're great men and some great women too. They tend to be mostly men, however, I will say that. But if accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours. So the hostages are coming back, and I hate even saying this from the standpoint, doesn't sound right, but it is so important to the parents. The bodies of the young men, I believe in almost all cases, the young men are coming back immediately. I met with parents. The parents felt as strongly about getting the body of their dead boy back as they did as though the boy were alive and well. It's so important to them. And it means the immediate end to the war itself, not just Gaza. It's the war itself. Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. and destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons of production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying. They'll also help train local police forces in the areas that we're discussing right now, in particular in and around Gaza. Working with the new transitional authority in Gaza, all parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw in phases. They'll be withdrawing in phases. No more shooting, hopefully, as progress is made toward achieving these goals. Arab and Muslim nations need to be allowed the chance to fulfill these commitments of dealing with Hamas. They have to deal with them because they were the one group that we have not dealt with. I haven't dealt with them. But the Arab countries are going to, and Muslim countries are going to be dealing with Hamas, and I believe they've already been there. I think they probably have an understanding, and they haven't maybe mentioned that, but I would imagine they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone as far as they've gone. If they're unable to do so, then Israel would have the absolute right and actually our full backing, the U.S. full backing. Marco's here, and a lot of our leaders are here, our great Vice President, Susie Wiles, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They've been so involved in this process. I don't think anybody else could have done it or even come close. But it's we're right there. We're right there. First time in thousands of years, I think you can probably say, if you really look into it, if you study back, if you're a scholar, you would say thousands of years. Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I hope that we're going to have a deal for peace. And if Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer. But if not, as you know, Bibi, you'd have our full backing to do what you would have to do. Everyone understands that the ultimate result must be the elimination of any danger posed in the region, and that danger is caused by Hamas. The tyranny of terror has to end, and this is, again, something that we're looking for. This is eternity. This is for forever. To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others, and they'll be named over the next few days, and it'll be quite the board. Working, everybody wants to be on it now. I don't know if that had anything to do. They named me, and everybody else wanted to be on it. I guess they figure, well, he's a soft touch. He'll be easy to deal with. Working with the World Bank and others, it will be responsible for recruiting and training a new government that will be made up of Palestinians along with highly qualified experts from all around the world. Hamas and other terrorist factions will play no role in the board, but they'll play no role in the governance of Gaza at all, directly or indirectly. As you know, thousands of Hamas leaders have been killed and soldiers have been killed. And we can never forget October 7th, but thousands have paid the price for that. And now it's time to get our hostages back and get back to trying to build something that's really great and very important. In our meeting today, Prime Minister Netanyahu was very clear about his opposition to a Palestinian state, and he continuously mentions October 7th, and I understand that. Most people do. And I understand and respect his position on many things, but what he's doing today is so good for Israel. I notice that they have large crowds gathering in Israel all the time, and they have my name up. They like me for whatever reason, Bibi, I don't know, but they do like me. But they say two things: please get the hostages back and please end the war. They've had it. It's had it. So I think it's a very popular thing you do, because he's a warrior. He doesn't know about getting back to a normal way of life, but he is a warrior, and Israel's lucky to have him. But now the people want to get back to peace. They want to get back to normalization in a true sense. Several countries have foolishly recognized the Palestinian state. As you know, some of our European friends, allies, good people, but they're really, I think, doing that because they're very tired of what's going on for so many decades. They've been presidents and prime ministers for years, and during this time, having to do with the Middle East, all they're doing is talking about the same thing over and over. They want to see it get back. And nobody wants that more than me, or I believe Bibi too. But the people of Israel want it. They really want it. They want the hostages back. That includes the probably 32 bodies that we're talking about, 20 people that are living, 32 or so people that are dead, and they want to have peace. So let us not forget how we got here. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago? They withdrew. They said, you take it. This is our contribution to peace. But that didn't work out. That didn't work out. It was the opposite of peace. They pulled away. They let them have it. And I never forgot that, because I said, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. As a real estate person, I mean, they gave up the ocean, right? Ron, they gave up the ocean. They said, who would do this deal? And it still didn't work out. They were very generous, actually. And they gave up the most magnificent piece of land in many ways in the Middle East. And they said, all we want to do now is have peace. And that request was not honored. Instead of building a better life for the Palestinians, Hamas diverted resources to build over 400 miles of tunnels and terror infrastructure, rocket production facilities, and hid their military command posts and launch sites in hospitals, schools, and mosques. So if you went after them, you'd be after them, and you wouldn't even realize you ended up knocking out a hospital or school or a mosque. That terrible thing, terrible way to have to fight. No fight is good, but that's a real bad one. So there are many Palestinians who wish to live in peace. Many. I've seen so many of them. And they have support. And I challenge the Palestinians to take responsibility for their destiny, because that's what we're giving them. We're giving them responsibility for their destiny, fully condemn and prohibit terrorism and earn their way to a brighter future. They don't want the life that they've had. They've had a rough life with Hamas. If the Palestinian Authority does not complete the reforms that I laid out in my vision for peace in 2020, they'll have only themselves to blame. We're giving them an amazing footprint, and they have amazing support from the leaders of the Arab world and the Muslim world, the great leaders. These are great leaders. These are unbelievable leaders that have built great countries and very wealthy countries. What the future holds for the Palestinians, no one really knows, but the plan that we put forward today is focused on ending the war immediately, getting all of our hostages back, getting everything back. Hard to believe when you even say it, and creating conditions for durable Israeli security and Palestinian success. Israeli security is going to be involved. We're going to help you. We'll be there with you in terms of helping with security. We want to make sure it works. We just want to make sure it works. There shouldn't be a shot fired. Now, there will be, I guess, because that's the way it seems to be, but there shouldn't have to be within a few days. There shouldn't have to be a shot fired. Maybe for eternity. Wouldn't that be nice? I hope it's true. I can tell you the leadership of that region feels that there's a good chance of it being true. So this will lead to this agreement that we're talking about will lead to a sustainable long-term peace. No president in history has been a greater friend of the state of Israel than I have, in addition to negotiating the Abraham Accords. I like to say it that way because the real people, that's what they call Abraham. I would say Abraham, but it's so much nicer when you say Abraham. So much more elegant. But the Abraham Accords are amazing. Jared, you did that along with your group of geniuses, and nobody thought that could be done. We have 4 countries, and Sleepy Joe Biden didn't do a thing. He didn't even know what the hell they were. He should have had them fold up. But I think this will also lead to packing them. And who knows, maybe even Iran can get in there. I hope. We hope we're going to be able to get along with Iran. I think they're going to be open to it. I really believe that. But they could be a member. I long ago said, I'll bet you at some point Iran will be a member of the Accords. And little did I realize it was going to take this turn. That was some turn we did with the B-2s. But I think they might very well be there because it's a great thing for them economically. I recognize the eternal capital of Israel. I opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. That was something that everyone said would never be done, could never be done. Virtually every president for many, many years, for decades, would campaign on making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. They campaigned on it over and over. Is that right, Steve? Is that right? Everyone, and when they got to it, and I understand why now, because it was so. When I got to office, I campaigned on it too. I said, we're going to make it. And then I'd get calls from the leaders of various countries saying, please don't do it, please don't do it. It'll end the whole world, please don't do it. And finally, I just didn't say anything, and I did it. People were calling me before I did it because I heard I was going to do it, and leaders of countries were calling me, and I think it was on a Thursday that I did it, and they'd call me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3-4 times a day, and I said, tell them I'll call them back on Friday. And I announced it on Thursday, and I called them back, the biggest people in the world, and they said, you've done it. I said, done what? You've made the capital of Israel, Jerusalem, and we wanted to talk yet. I wish you called me a little sooner. Maybe I could have done something about it. So that was a lot easier than getting into an argument, because I knew what they were calling about. And you know what? It turned out to be amazing. Everybody thought it was going to lead to the end of the world, right? The end of the world, Ron, that's what they said. It didn't lead to anything. It just led to something that I promised, and something that was very, very popular for Jewish people and a lot of other people, too. I recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and I cut taxpayer funding to the corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And United Nations was interesting because, as you know, a few days ago they introduced me. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. I'm looking at my teleprompter, and the thing was dead, stone cold, dead. The thing's up here. I have a long, beautiful speech to make. I'm back 30 feet back, and I'm saying, they're introducing me. There's nothing on my teleprompter. So, but I made a speech. I actually got good marks. You think Biden could have done that? I don't think so. I don't think he could have done that. I don't think too many people could have done it. But actually, it was actually more of a speech from my heart, if you want to know the truth. I think it was maybe better in certain ways because it was from the heart. It has to be from the heart. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. But I cut taxpayer funding for that very corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and nobody thought that would be done, and withdrew from the horrible Iran nuclear deal that was imposed upon Israel by Barack Hussein Obama and Biden. And I don't think Biden knew anything about it, though. I don't think he knows anything about it now, actually, if you ask him. He'd say, what is that? And we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity, making it impossible for them to have a nuclear weapon, which they would have had probably in about 2 months from that. But I've never asked Israel to compromise its security, but we had big, strong talk. Nobody's been better to Israel. No president's been better to Israel than Donald Trump. But we had a long, strong talk, Bibi and I, and he understands it's time. It's time. History has shown. And the people of Israel want it. And the people of the Middle East want it. The people of enemies of Israel want it. But they don't have really too many enemies right now. And you know what? Many countries have gained great respect for Israel, for the way they fight, for the job they do, including me. I had respect anyway, but they gained respect. History has shown us that those who have relations with Israel have thrived, while those who have devoted resources and attention toward the destruction and even annihilation of Israel have languished. They haven't done well. Israel is not going anywhere. They're going to coexist with other people and countries in the region, from Syria to Lebanon to Saudi Arabia. The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace, not fake peace, not political fool's peace. If we can get this difficult problem solved, the opportunities for all within that vast region of this world, it's a vast region, it's unlimited. The Abraham Accords show that all countries are better off when they communicate and work together and embrace new opportunities. I hope Jared and Steve and Susie and Marco and JD, we have great people. I hope you guys are going to work very hard to get these other countries in, because now they have no excuse. There's no longer an excuse. They were somewhere hesitant. And I tell you, the 4 countries that went in, I give them tremendous credit, and it's worked out incredibly well for them. In the same spirit, I'm pleased to report that earlier today we took another important step toward greater understanding in the region. A short time ago, we had a historic phone call in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Tani, who's really a great, great person. So we had a great talk, and I was on the phone, and Bibi was talking. Prime Minister Al-Thani was of Qatar. They really had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a great conversation, I thought. It was productive. It was everything that you need to have something turn out to be successful. And I want to thank Bibi, and I want to thank the Prime Minister. It was fantastic. We agreed to launch a formal trilateral mechanism between Israel, Qatar, and the United States to begin a dialogue to enhance mutual security, correct misperceptions, and avoid future misgivings. And I want to thank Qatar, its leadership, and the Emir. He's a fantastic person. I think, I'm going to be his public relations man, because I know him differently than a lot of people know him. But he wants peace. He wants to see peace. And his people, and they really acknowledge the critical role that they've played as mediator. And again, we're not quite finished. We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do that. So now it's time for Hamas to accept the terms of the plan that we've put forward today. And again, this is a different Hamas than we were dealing with, because I guess over 20,000 have been killed. Their leadership has been killed 3 times over. So you're really dealing with different people than we've been dealing with over the last 4 years, 5 years. Everyone has done their part and come to the table in good faith. Our Arab and Muslim partners are fully prepared to step up and fulfill their commitments for the benefit of the people of Gaza and the entire region. They're willing to step up and do a lot. They really are. There are a lot of good people involved. Everybody who wants to see an end to the violence and destruction should be united in calling for Hamas to accept the extremely fair proposal so that we can end the war and get us back our hostages right now and have everlasting peace. And I look forward to having relationships with everyone. As the chairman of the board, I'll be involved, and we'll have meetings with some very smart people that'll be working over there to make sure that we haven't just been wasting time with an agreement that doesn't get done. The task of building peace will not be easy. There are some of the hardest problems in the world to solve, and that's why it's been going on for so many centuries. but too many lives are at stake not to try, and this is more than a try. I mean, I think this is something that gets done when you have virtually every country, and these are powerful, powerful countries that have a lot of money, and the money can make things happen. A lot of countries try and they don't have any money. These are very rich countries that can make things happen. So together we'll forge a much safer and more hopeful future for everybody, including Israel. And I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for his partnership. And I want to thank all of the leaders, the kings and the emirs and the presidents and prime ministers, people I mentioned. And they've been absolutely fantastic to work with, and it's just happened very quickly. It's happened from a couple of weeks before I had a couple of meetings, but a couple of weeks before we went to the United Nations, and we had some incredible meetings. It all came to place. It all took place, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. I don't have anybody that's saying we don't want anything to do with it. It's just the opposite. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, a year ago, I don't think we would have had this kind of participation, Mr. VP, right? I don't think we would have had. It's been amazing. The participation was 100%. Everybody wants to be a part of it. And everybody, those very strong countries, everybody wants it to work. So, Bibi, congratulations on this. I think this will be your crowning achievement, frankly. If this all works out, we think it will. It's going to be your crowning achievement. And I want to thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, first I want to thank you for graciously hosting me once again in the White House. And second, I want to thank you for your friendship and for your leadership. From Jerusalem to Tehran, from the Golan Heights to Gaza, you've proven time and again what I've said many times. You are the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And Mr. President, you and I both know it's not even close. While you focus at home on making America great again, your leadership abroad is changing the world for the better, ending wars and advancing peace. I believe that today we're taking a critical step towards both ending the war in Gaza and setting the stage for dramatically advancing peace in the Middle East, and I think beyond the Middle East, in very important Muslim countries. I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. We would not have achieved this turning point without the courage and sacrifice of our incredibly brave soldiers. They fight like lions to defend the people of Israel, and they serve on the front line in the war between civilization and barbarism. Mr. President, when our two countries stand shoulder to shoulder, we achieve the impossible. Just a few months ago, in Operation Rising Lion and Operation Midnight Hammer, we struck a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. Your bold decision to send those B-2s made the region safer and the world safer. Now, under your leadership, we're taking the next step to win the war and expand the peace. Your plan is consistent with the 5 principles my government set for the end of the war and the day after Hamas. Everybody asks, what is your plan for the day after Hamas? Here's our plan. Passed it in the cabinet. All our hostages, both those who are alive and those who died, all of them will return home immediately. Hamas will be disarmed. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will retain security responsibility, including a security perimeter for the foreseeable future. And lastly, Gaza will have a peaceful civilian administration that is run neither by Hamas nor by the Palestinian Authority. If Hamas agrees to your plan, Mr. President, the first step will be a modest withdrawal, followed by the release of all our hostages within 72 hours. The next step will be the establishment of an international body charged with fully disarming Hamas and demilitarizing Gaza. I appreciate your willingness to lead the body, Mr. President. I really appreciate it because you have a lot of things to do, and this is important. And it reflects the confidence that this will give everyone, that things will be followed up on all the commitments made. The fact that you're taking this on, I think, helps a lot to make sure that everything flows in the direction that we want. Now, if this international body succeeds, we will have permanently ended the war. Israel will conduct further withdrawals linked to the extent of disarmament and demilitarization, but will remain in the security perimeter for the foreseeable future. I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved because we didn't fight this horrible fight, sacrifice the finest of our young men to have Hamas stay in Gaza and threaten us again and again and again with these horrific massacres. Mr. President, I was encouraged by your clear statement at the UN against the recognition of a Palestinian state. That would be an outcome that, after October 7th, would reward terrorists, undermine security, and endanger Israel's very existence. As for the Palestinian Authority, I appreciate your firm position that the PA could have no role whatsoever in Gaza without undergoing a radical and genuine transformation. In your 2020 peace plan, which you mentioned just now, you made clear what that transformation requires. It's not lip service. It's not checking a box. It's a fundamental, genuine, and enduring transformation. And that means ending pay to slay, changing the poisonous textbooks that teach hatred to Jews, to Palestinian children, stopping incitement in the media, ending lawfare against Israel at the ICC, the ICJ, recognizing the Jewish state, and many, many other reforms. It won't come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of Israelis have no faith that the PA Leopard will change its spots. But rather than wait for this miraculous transformation, your plan provides a practical and realistic path forward for Gaza in the coming years, in which Gaza will be administered neither by Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority, but by those committed to a genuine peace with Israel. I think this can be not only a new beginning for Gaza, I think it can be a new beginning for the entire region. Under your leadership, we can re-energize, well, I've got to contribute my own, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords. That's what it's called in the original Hebrew, Abraham. Abraham is fine, Abraham, however you want to call it. Under your leadership, Mr. President, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords that we forged 5 years ago. We can expand them to many more Arab and Muslim nations that choose moderation over extremism. I think there's an opportunity here. It's not going to be easy. It's tough going, but I think if we succeed, you're absolutely right. We're going to open possibilities that nobody even dreamed of. But I think we dream of them. As you've told me, Mr. President, and you've told the world many, many times, you said, remember October 7th. Remember October 7th. And we do. We will never forget the horrors of October 7th, and we will do whatever is necessary to make sure they don't happen again. Since October 7th, Israel's enemies have learned a hard truth. Those who attack us pay a heavy price, but those who partner with us advance progress and security for their peoples. President Trump just said it. It's also in the Bible. It says, those who will bless you will be blessed, and those who will curse you will be cursed. And that's actually what is happening. We want the blessings. I think we've done a lot in the past 2 years to end the curse. We're not finished, but we've done a lot. And we've done a lot together to end the curse. I want to thank your entire team for their efforts to get to this point. I especially want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for their indefatigable work to bring Israel and Arab states in the region closer together. I am deeply grateful to both of them for their work. We had a phone call today just to make it clear. I said to the Prime Minister of Qatar, Israel was targeting terrorists, wasn't targeting Qatar. And of course, we regretted the loss of the Qatari citizen, wasn't our target. And I very much appreciate President Trump's proposal to have a trilateral body, the United States, Israel, and Qatar, to work out respective grievances. There are quite a few. But if we could try to mitigate them or put it on a different footing, I think that would be good for everyone. Above all the people, the fine team, and many helpers who've done this, I want to thank you, Mr. President. History has already shown that under your leadership, Israel and America can change the face of the Middle East. And today I'm hopeful that your plan to end the war in Gaza will do so again and do so soon. It will free our hostages, end Hamas's tyranny in Gaza, and enable a more secure and prosperous future for the peoples of our region. Thank you, Mr. President. May God bless America. May God bless Israel. May God bless the indispensable alliance between our countries. And may I add in Hebrew, G'mal Chatima Tova, may we all be inscribed in the book of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bibi. So I think while we wait for these documents to be signed and get everybody in line, I think it maybe is not really appropriate to take questions. I'm meeting with, as you know, a couple of Democrats in a little while about the country, about keeping our country open. They're going to have to do some things because their ideas are not very good ones. They're very bad for our country. So we'll see how that works out. But this is something that was really historic today. This was something that was amazing. I think, Bibi, I mean, depending on you, I think while we're waiting for signatures and waiting for approvals from a lot of different countries that are involved in this, we probably shouldn't take questions? Or would you like to take a question or two from perhaps a friendly Israeli reporter, if there's such a thing?
That's a very, very tough proposition. But I would think, Mr. President, that I would go by your instinct that this is, we'll have enough time for questions. Let's settle the issue first, I think. No.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
And you were just listening to some remarks from President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from the White House in Washington, D.C. President Trump says that a deal to end the war in Gaza is, quote, very close, as he, of course, was alongside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu The president said that he wasn't going to take any questions until that deal is officially done. We will definitely continue to follow that. The president said he was on his way to speak to some Democrats because our government is on the verge of another government shutdown. So if we get any updates on that, we'll bring that to you here on Chicago Live as well. Brian Jackson here with you. Time is now 2:09. We're going to have much more when Chicago Live returns. To Chicago Live on this Monday afternoon. Time is now 2:11. I'm Brian Jackson. Many of you watching this may take Metra to and from work each day. And Metra is rolling out a brand new idea this fall. They're calling this a prototype cafe car. It's part of Metra's push to kind of improve the rider experience and even attract some new passengers. We're joined now by Meg Thomas-Riley from Metra. Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you as well. So I want to start with what inspired Metra to test out this cafe car for commuters, and what exactly does it consist of?
When we do customer satisfaction surveys and such, this is an amenity that a long time ago, say like 20 years ago, and for a long time before that, there were what were called bar cars on some of our lines. And that allowed passengers to get a drink after work and coffee in the morning. And those disappeared over the years, one for a lack of a vendor who would help handle that. But also those cars needed to go out and be rehabilitated to keep them in service. Anyway, so that disappeared over time. And it's one of the things that we talked to people about. And they, expressed some interest in it. And we're also, post-COVID, we're looking for ways to attract more riders, improve the customer experience. So we started looking into trying something like this. So what it consists of is we took half of a regular Metra car, we took out the seats, we took out the upper deck, and we replaced the seats with a bar area where where coffee and snacks could be served, and tables and stools for people to sit down. So it makes it more into basically a cafe experience versus just sitting there zoned into in your own zone for your commute. So we're just trying this out to see if customers like it, what they'd like to see with it. And and if they're interested in using it. That's why it's called a prototype. So we're going to be rotating it on several of our lines through October and November, and see what the response is.
And Meg, you guys decided to start this with the Rock Island line. Why that one
Correct.
specifically, and what other
One
lines
thing
are
about
being
the Rock
considered?
Island that makes it different than some of these other lines that we're going to put it on is we own it completely. We control all the traffic on it. That's tends to be if we're experimenting with something, new equipment, whatever, new service plan, we try it out there because we have ultimate control over more parameters. Whereas the other lines, like the next line's going on the BNSF to Aurora, we don't own that. That's operated under a purchase of service agreement with the BNSF. So we don't have complete control over that, but it's also our highest ridership line, and that's where we're likely to get a good, most response. We're really looking for customers to tell us what they think of it, because if we're going to go and reconfigure cars and enter into a contract with a vendor to provide this service for our passengers, we need to know what they want. We need to know if they want it at all.
So is the goal here just to boost ridership, or is it to maybe improve the commute, or maybe a combination of both?
It's a combo. It's partially boost ridership, but because it's making it a more attractive and relaxing way to go. But it's also to provide an amenity for our current customers that we think they would enjoy, and to make this, their experience better, which always translates into saying, oh yeah, it's a great way to go. So to encourage other people to come on.
So you've mentioned that rider feedback is going to be very key in this process. What does success look like, and how are you guys judging success in terms of if you want to roll this out to other lines in the future?
I think it's that we are, when you go into the cafe car, you're going to be asked to fill out a survey, and then we're going to be provided with free snacks and stuff. The survey is going to consist of, what do you think of the amenity as it exists? What type of, beverages, whatever would you like to see on board? Do you really think this is the way we should be going? I mean, the commute has changed also since the pandemic, but also in the past 20 years, as we've all got our electronic devices. As a longtime Metra rider myself, there used to be many more occasions where people just sat down, because we are very much creatures of habit. We get on the same car every day. We sometimes end up in the same seat every day. And there were social groups that formed on Metra. And that's kind of encouraging that again. But as as the world transitioned to electronic devices, people are more shut off from each other than they've ever been. So this is kind of encouraging more of a community aspect as well.
I imagine you've spoken to some riders in advance of this. Could you provide any insight into some of the amenities that they've actually been asking for?
Well, the biggest amenity people want are more service or more room on the trains. So in this case, where we are experimenting, we want to assure riders, especially if it's on a crowded run in the morning, we're adding the car, not taking away a car. So you will, if you don't want to participate or don't want to see it, you can get on you'll have a seat where you normally sit. So we're not taking away anything during this, but we really want to see if people will migrate to that car, want to use it, and literally, we're just out there seeking, is this something you'd like to see as part of your service? And that's really the most we're going for right now. We did do a small pop-up earlier this year at LaSalle Street Station, and it was a combo effort with the Active Transportation Alliance to go in and look at this, for people to give a look. That feedback from that crowd was very positive, but that is a very transit-centric crowd, and we want to extend it to our regular riders. Not that the transit-centric crowd is not a regular rider, but they're a segment of ridership, right. And we want to make sure that the whole ridership has a chance to be exposed to this and get some feedback.
Meg, you've mentioned that this is a pilot that's going to be starting with the Rock Island line starting tomorrow. What's the timeline for the decision on potentially expanding this?
Don't really have a timeline yet. I mean, as you understand, we're also dealing with a fiscal crisis for public transit as a whole in the region. Now, while we can create the cars at our own expense, we in-house. We don't have to take anything outside. We have a great crew of people down in our shops who can build pretty much anything you want. But we would have to seek a vendor. So I'd say it would probably be at minimum probably a year before you would see, after we analyze the data, or if we were to put this into action, or we would probably have to make an announcement in a few months, whether that's, literally this is to see if this is something our riders want.
All right,
it's not about forcing something on them.
Looking forward to seeing what the riders on the Rock Island line will have to say about Metra's new prototype, what they're calling a cafe car. Meg Thomas-Riley from Metra, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
You're welcome. One little thing I want to mention, if other people are interested in the other lines when it's going to be out there, you will find the schedules posted week by week on our website at metra.com/cafe car, all one word. So you can look into your line and see when it'll be out there.
All right, Meg, thanks so much, and good luck with this new pilot program of Metra's cafe car. All right, time is now 2:20 here on Chicago Live. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live on this Monday afternoon. We are continuing to follow some of the developments out of Grand Blanc Township in Michigan following a tragic church shooting that left 4 people dead and several others hurt. We are joined now by Jessica Dubnak from our sister station, Fox 2 in Detroit, who's been covering this story from the ground. Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So I want to start with, we've learned today that a 21-year-old was taken into custody for, I guess, violating the church barricades. Could you share a little bit more light on what happened in this situation?
Yeah, so just for a little bit of context, Grand Lake Township is a suburb of Flint, Michigan, which a lot of folks will know in the Chicago area. Yeah, earlier today around 12:30, there was a press conference with all the law enforcement you could imagine. And shortly before that press conference happened, the sort of the crime scene, the huge barricaded area around the church that was victimized yesterday, a driver tried to breach that barrier, if you imagine kind of the orange cones and that kind of thing. And a 21-year-old was taken into custody. I understand that a weapon was retrieved, a gun from that vehicle. Now, it's unclear if there was malicious intent there or what the issue was, but yes, that did in fact happen today. And I think that police took that 21-year-old into custody, and they're trying to piece together if this had anything to do with what happened yesterday or if it was just like a very unfortunate set of circumstances or coincidences, if you will.
With this latest incident, has that changed at all how investigators are maybe increasing security around this active crime scene?
Yeah, I think that it's just really doubling down and underscoring that this is an active crime scene and an immense one at that. As far as resources are concerned, I'm not sure you could fit any more law enforcement within the parameters, with the FBI leading this investigation, sort of promising all resources at the federal level, and then all of the sort of local organizations, law enforcement agencies following in lockstep with the feds under their directive.
What is the latest on the conditions of some of the 8 victims who were injured in this incident?
So 4 people, unfortunately, are deceased, 2 of gunshot wounds, and the shooter, the 40-year-old from this area, actually set fire to the church as well using an accelerant, likely gasoline. So 2 victims deceased from gunshot wounds. The other 2 victims believed to have perished in the fire after that roof collapse. Just awful, awful situation. And there were 8 other victims that were hospitalized. 3 have been released from the hospital. 5 still remain in the hospital. 2 of those in critical condition, 1 in critical condition with gunshot wounds. The other is in critical intubated because of smoke inhalation. Now, in terms of what we're learning about those victims, we know the age range is 6 years old to 78 years old. And I know a lot of folks would want to focus on that little 6-year-old. We understand that they suffered a gunshot wound to the arm. They were transferred to a local children's hospital where they are described as stable at this point.
You mentioned that this area is a little bit outside of Flint, Michigan. How are community members in the nearby areas, how are they responding to this latest, I guess, national tragedy that we're now seeing?
Well, it's just heartbreaking, and unfortunately, our governor Gretchen Whitmer spoke at a press conference earlier today, and she said that it's become so common almost, but the pain, it still remains. So, this community, strong, very resilient people, I would consider probably like working class folks. I think we just are a part of an unfortunate club now that so many other communities around the country are now part of. And in terms of the LDS Church, we haven't heard a ton from them. They're trying to gather themselves. I mean, there were hundreds of people in this church on a Sunday morning, and not only were lives lost and there were so many victims, their church is now gone too. It's completely crumbled at this point, and that's such symbolism for what their religion and their place of worship will be undergoing moving forward.
And Jessica, last one for you. Have you gotten any updates from police on any more details revealing a possible motive by the shooter in this case?
Yeah, and that's it. We've been following it all day, and it's, again, not to sensationalize, this shooter or give him any more notoriety, but I think the thing is, people want to know why. It's part of the grieving process and maybe moving forward in terms of preventing something like this. We do know he's a 40-year-old. He has a wife and a 10-year-old son, unclear on his marital status at the time of the shooting. We do know he is a Marine veteran serving time in Iraq, and I think it's important to note that he did have, he was skilled with firearms and possibly explosives, as several IEDs, or those improvised explosive devices, were found at the church as well. So this is an attack that definitely had some planning. Our governor, again, urging people to sort of take the rhetoric down in terms of speculation, but we cannot ignore that this person chose this church in particular, in fact, probably passing a number of other churches on the way to commit this heinous crime. So there definitely seems to be a link in particular with the Church of Latter-day Saints.
All right, reporter Jessica Dubnev from our sister station, Fox 2 in Detroit. Thank you so much for those updates. All right, time is now 2:28. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back here on Chicago Live. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Live look outside. Boat season still in effect, at least for another few days, with temperatures in the mid-80s. But is the heat related to this next story? We're about to find out. Well, the Chicago area just recorded its highest mold spore count on record. We're joined now by Dr. Assata Shakur, an allergist who leads Loyola's program. It's going to give us a little bit of an idea about what this means for your health and also how to protect yourself. Thanks so much for being here, Dr. Shah.
Well, thank you for having us.
I want to start with first, what exactly is a mold spore count?
So mold, and especially mold spores, are microscopic particles that float in the air. And these particles, when we breathe them in, if you're allergic to them, can cause symptoms. And so we at Loyola Medicine record and count the actual mold spore counts. And so it's a physical count that's done. So it's a slide that's read under the microscope, and I physically count how many mold spores are there, how many pollen or other things like that are there, and that's what gets reported.
When you're getting these counts of mold, I guess, how are you retrieving that data? Are you going to certain areas of the city, the suburbs, or where are you kind of pulling all this information from?
So our station is located on top of Gottlieb Hospital, which is in Melrose Park. And so there's certain requirements for stations on how high our devices can be. And so ours is on the 7th floor of the hospital, so on the roof of the hospital. And this machine, it essentially, every morning, a slide is put into there that's coated in silicone. And this machine then continuously is moving every 15 seconds, the slide is, and it's sucking in air in the direction of the wind. And what gets put on the slide is the particles that are in the air that include mold spores and pollen.
And you mentioned the air and kind of sucking in the wind. We're kind of having some unseasonably warm temperatures. It feels like summer's kind of extending into what should be the fall. What impact is that having on some of the scores you're seeing?
Well, last week we had an unusually high count, and so it was our record high count. And I think a lot of that can be explained by not only how warm it's been, but also it's generally been dry. I believe if you look over the past couple years, this season has been particularly a dry September going into October now. What rain does is it brings down those mold spores. And so without that, all of that is just floating in the air. This is also the time of year that we normally see a little higher counts just because of the decay of plant material, from leaves to grass to even crops and other things that can float around, because all of these spores they can fly even hundreds of miles. And so it's coming from all over the place. But I do think it's the combination of how warm it's been and also how dry it's been.
Also, I want to ask you, what kind of symptoms should people be looking out for on days when there's a lot of mold in the air?
So if you're allergic to mold, and the way that you figure that out is either you notice that with certain exposures that you have it, or you can get tested to figure out what your allergy profile is. But if you know that you're allergic to mold, then the kind of symptoms that you can feel are itchy eyes, itchy nose, sneezing, runny nose. Sometimes because this mold season has been so extended, there can be a lot more congestion or sinus symptoms. Because of that, it also makes you more prone to infections, from viral infections to bacterial infections. And if it settles in the nose long enough, you can also get symptoms of asthma. And so having difficulty breathing, coughing, tightness in the chest.
Are certain groups, are we talking children, seniors, people with compromised immune systems, a little bit more susceptible to this?
I think definitely those who have a history of asthma. 60 to 70% of asthmatics have some sort of allergic triggers that can increase their asthma symptoms. So I don't think this is something that if you're immunocompromised or if you're a baby or other things like that, that can be more impactful. But definitely if you have asthma, if you have allergies and a known allergy to mold, this can be very impactful.
Are there any treatments or medications out there that maybe somebody can get over the counter that can kind of, I guess, help combat this?
Of course. So the number one thing I recommend is avoidance measures as best as possible, which is difficult to do, but keeping windows closed as much as possible, or if you go outside for a longer period of time, coming back in, rinsing off, changing clothes, even when you're doing yard work, because the soil has a great deal of mold in it. So when you're working with the soil or mowing the grass or or raking leaves, then a lot of mold exposure can occur, and that can lead to symptoms. So avoidance is the first way, but oftentimes that's really difficult to do because we have to live our lives and it's good to be outside. So then there are some over-the-counter medications that can be really helpful. There's antihistamines like Zyrtec, Allegra, Claritin. These help with the itchy symptoms that patients can feel. Then there's nose sprays like Flonase, Nasonex, Nasacort. They help decrease the inflammation that allergies can cause. So it helps with congestion, sneezing, mucus production, things like that. Beyond that, if you're still symptomatic, that's the time to go see an allergist.
Exactly how long do you expect, I guess, these elevated levels to stay here in the Chicago area?
So typically it's until the first frost, which is such a difficult thing to predict because I feel like every week the weather has been a little different. And so, we have a cool week and it's like, oh, it's almost fall, and a week like this week, it feels like we're still in summer. And so it really just depends on when the first frost is going to occur. My prediction is that it's going to be within the next like 4 to 5 weeks. But, in Chicago, we just never know.
In the meantime, where can people go to, I guess, check the daily numbers that you guys are putting out?
Sure. So the Loyola Medicine allergy count, we have a Twitter that or on X that you can go. So any social media outlets like that, they post it every day. But a lot of our news affiliates too, they're very wonderful about announcing our counts and letting people know about it.
All right, Dr. Shah, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take a short break here on Chicago Live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. The time is now 2:41. There's been a lot of drama this weekend surrounding a post that was put up by Chicago's Teachers Union. They're facing a lot of backlash for posting a tribute to Assata Shakur, a convicted cop killer who spent decades on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. She was able to break out of prison and eventually fled to Cuba, where she spent the rest of her life until she passed away a week ago. So there's been a lot of pushback that CTU has been getting for the light that they shined on Shakur. We're expecting to hear from one of the Chicago alders about this, and we're going to bring that to you right here on Chicago Live after we return from a short break. Back to Chicago Live on this Monday afternoon. Over the weekend, ICE agents, they patrolled downtown Chicago, including just outside of our studios here on Michigan Avenue, as well as the Chicago Riverwalk as well. The Border Patrol Chief, Gregory Bovino, he said that agents were stopping people based on appearance, which is sparking a lot of criticism. We are expecting an update from Governor Pritzker. He is scheduled to give an update on some of the ICE patrols we've been seeing across the city of Chicago. This is a live look right now, and we will bring that to you. We're expecting for that to start around the top of the hour. As soon as it does, we're going to bring it to you live here on Fox 32 Chicago. Also back home, more controversy. This time around, the Chicago Teachers Union, they're facing a lot of backlash for a post that paid tribute to Assata Shakur. She is a convicted cop killer who spent decades on the run from the FBI, including she ended after she broke out of prison. She then made her way to Cuba, where she spent the rest of her life before dying last week. The social media post, it kind of praised her as a revolutionary leader and is drawing a lot of sharp criticism from some public officials, including the alderman that we are speaking with this afternoon. Alderman Riley, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you.
What was your immediate reaction when you saw CTU's post honoring Shakur?
I was shocked to be honoring someone who President Obama put on America's most wanted terrorism list. Speaks volumes. This is someone who murdered in cold blood a state trooper and was affiliated with what is known to be a violent terrorist organization, and one that espoused hate. For the CTU, for the Chicago Teachers Union, to be eulogizing this person and canonizing them as a hero, I thought was offensive.
Do you believe that this type of message represents some of the values of CTU as well as some of Chicago's educators?
Well, it seems to me that it represents the values of CTU leadership, but unfortunately, CTU, they're supposed to be representing the views of some almost 30,000 professional teachers across the city of Chicago. And I can tell you a number of our educators here at CPS, at our public school system, are married to first responders. So imagine the dinner conversation mom and dad are having with their kids when one is a Chicago public school teacher and the other is a Chicago cop. And so that alone is an issue. But the bottom line is the rank and file educators here have their own politics. And I would argue not nearly as extreme left as the rhetoric that's coming out of the Chicago Teachers Union. And so by eulogizing this known terrorist and cop killer, the CTU has painted their own membership in a poor way, when many of these people are phenomenal professional educators, and that's really all they're focused on, is educating kids. So the Teachers Union has gotten way outside of their lane of traffic here. Last I checked, a union's job is to represent their membership at the collective bargaining table and work for their working conditions and to ensure that their rights as employees are protected, but not to be wading into this ridiculous ideology war where Marxism and, frankly, violent uprising is being espoused by this organization. It's unacceptable.
Should mention that Fox 32 Chicago has reached out to CTU for comment, and as of this moment, we still have not heard back from them to hear their side of this. Alderman, I want to ask you, how do you think that the union should be held accountable for posting this on social media?
Well, I think at a very bare minimum, our local political leadership should denounce this statement. We have elected officials here who have benefited greatly from the political action committee that the teachers union runs. And I would argue that our county president, Tony Preckwinkle, should denounce this statement. And certainly Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is a former employee of the Chicago Teachers Union, he needs to lead by example. He no longer works for that union. He works for the people of the city of Chicago. And I think the mayor owes it to the people of Chicago to denounce this horrible statement and for him to encourage his former partners at the teachers union to walk this statement back. It was highly irresponsible. We should never, ever celebrate someone who made a name for herself killing cops in cold blood and also landing on the United States terrorist list. Worth mentioning, she was broken out of prison and never was held accountable for that murder. Just a couple years after she committed that murder against that police officer, she was broken out of prison and she fled to Cuba, where she led a very comfortable life. And so people also forget that very important fact here too.
What impact, if any, do you think that this incident will have on a relationship between CTU and some of the parents of the kids.
I can't imagine that this has done anything to improve that relationship. You know, if you look at the performance of our public schools, it is still pretty moribund. We are not educating kids at the high level that we should. And it's frustrating because we have so many talented educators in our school system. But distractions like this from the Chicago Teachers Union only do more harm to the credibility of the school system. And it also raises the question, are some of the more militant members of the CTU who are in our classrooms, are they trying to indoctrinate our children with this horrible view that there is justification for political violence? And I think based on what we've seen play out in recent weeks across the country, this is exactly the wrong time to be sending that message to our kids. There should never, ever be violence, especially around political speech. So this is a very troubling development.
We did hear from New Jersey's governor who did speak out about this. What do you think that this incident does in terms of putting Chicago in the national spotlight for another negative reason?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. We have a lot of struggles here for sure, but this is a great city. And when we have the local teachers union getting up and espousing this rhetoric and celebrating someone who literally killed someone, was found guilty of that, and then escaped prison, that's not painting our city in a good light. And there are lots of very positive things that we can talk about when we talk about the city of Chicago, but this is not one of those areas where the teachers union is helping us. I'd say quite the opposite. They should be embarrassed for these remarks.
I know that you spoke with some of your other alders a little bit earlier today. What's been the response from them? And have any of you spoken to any parents that may have kids in Chicago public schools? And have they provided any insight on what they're now seeing from CTU?
Yeah, a number of my colleagues were at our press event earlier today, and each of them reported their own stories, either receiving phone calls from upset parents or also from educators who happen to be married to first responders. We've seen a mix of those things, but all of the feedback has been negative. And people are asking, why is the teachers union, which is supposed to be really representing their union members at the bargaining table, why are they opining on things like this in the first place? So again, it raises questions about what I consider to be the great work our rank and file educators are doing in our school system. It calls into question whether or not some of those folks may be using their classroom access to indoctrinate kids. And I don't think any parents, regardless of your political ideology, want teachers planting these types of seeds in their kids' heads. Whether you're a centrist like me, or a far lefty or a far righty on the political spectrum, you don't want to hear that there are educators pushing your kids in one direction or the other when it comes to political beliefs. But no one should be advocating for political violence to achieve their goals. That's the really, really dangerous and troubling message here, is that somehow in some circumstances that it's okay to commit acts of political violence. That is absolutely wrong.
So far, we have not heard a response from CTU about this, and at least as of this morning, that post was still up there on X. In your viewpoint, what do we think and what do we see happening next in this saga?
Well, obviously, we're hearing crickets from the mayor's office. I think the mayor of the city of Chicago, who has control to a degree over a Chicago public school system, and ironically, or not so ironically, is a former employee of the Chicago Teachers Union, has not spoken out on this. Frank, he should have spoken out on this last Friday when this statement was first made, or at any point over the weekend when he was running into members of the Chicago media. Now here we are near the end of the day on Monday, so more than 72 hours after this statement came out, and we haven't heard a peep out of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. That is also very disturbing. The bottom line is my colleagues want to hear from the teachers union an apology and a repudiation of their message from our mayor, who's supposed to represent the entire city of Chicago.
Alderman Riley, is this something that you plan to bring in front of the entire council?
Look, let's see what the mayor does, if he responds at all. If we don't get a response from the mayor, it may be that we need to call for some public hearings to get to the bottom of this. But the bottom line is that the teachers union needs to stick to what their core mission is, which is supposed to be representing the interest of their union members at a bargaining table, not celebrating the life of someone who murdered a police officer and then was broken out of prison and fled to Cuba.
All right, Alderman Riley, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. And then again, Fox 32 Chicago has reached out to CTU for response, but as of 2:57 this afternoon, we are still waiting to hear from them. We're going to take a short break, and thanks so much for your time, Alderman Riley.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live, taking a live look at the big board. You can see right now it looks like stocks are trending upwards, just over 60 points so far on this Monday afternoon. And on this edition of Chicago Live is getting ready to wrap up, where we're actually going to have some extended coverage for you today. We're expecting for Governor Pritzker to provide an update after a lot of ICE patrols we're seeing here in the city of Chicago, including a lot of downtown tourist spots, including Michigan Avenue as well as the Riverwalk. We're going to bring that press conference to you live. We're expecting for it to start somewhere around the top of the hour now here at 3 o'clock. And we're going to keep it right here. We're going to bring you those remarks from Governor Pritzker as soon as they happen.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Over the weekend, we received numerous confirmed reports of federal agents from ICE and Customs and Border Patrol abusing their power, intimidating innocent civilians, and waging war on our people. All of this has been aimed at causing chaos and mayhem in the hopes of creating a pretext to deploy military troops against Chicago and Broadview and other suburbs, just as the president is doing right now in Oregon. Moments ago, the Illinois National Guard received word that the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to the Department of War seeking the deployment of 100 military troops to Illinois, claiming a need for the protection of ICE personnel and facilities. What I have been warning of is now being realized. One thing is clear, none of what Trump is doing is making Illinois safer. 2 weeks ago, a man was shot and killed by ICE in Franklin Park, Illinois. Shortly after, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying the federal agent was seriously injured. The Chicago Sun-Times has brought to light that the injuries were, in the agent's own words, nothing major. A man is dead. A community is shaken up. And we are yet again left with more questions than answers. On Saturday, federal agents wreaked havoc on the village of Broadview, a small suburb west of Chicago with 8,000 residents. I want to recognize Broadview Mayor Katrina Thompson, who is here today, and thank her for her strong and vocal leadership on behalf of her community. I also want to thank Broadview's police chief, Thomas Mills, for his steady leadership and partnership with state and surrounding local law enforcement. In Broadview, people nonviolently holding signs and chanting against brutality, expressing their First Amendment rights, have been regularly attacked with chemical agents like tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. Agents reportedly unholstered their guns and pointed them at protesters. In their own words, ICE intended to unleash, quote, a shit show in the Broadview community. Without provocation and acting like jackbooted thugs, ICE has attacked and detained members of the press, including an independent journalist. A CBS Chicago correspondent had chemical munitions fired at her car where there were no protesters in sight. And we have received many reports of U.S. citizens being detained for simply stepping onto the public street. There were no protesters in sight. And we have received many reports of U.S. citizens being detained for simply stepping onto the public street. That brings us to yesterday. On a beautiful weekend, when families were out enjoying their day in Chicago, armed Border Patrol agents were downtown marching up and down Michigan Avenue, harassing and intimidating residents and tourists. In Millennium Park, federal agents interrogated a family as their small daughter held onto her doll and appeared to try to translate for her parents. Officers carried large, unholstered, offensive weapons downtown, dressed in camouflage and masks. Building tradesmen near Tribune Tower, simply doing their jobs, were detained by federal agents while working on a construction site. Separately, 24 federal agents chased down a man, handcuffed him, and asked him for his papers. Meanwhile, ICE's chief offender, Gregory Bovino, has been leading the disruption and causing mayhem while he gleefully poses for photo ops and TikTok videos. Bovino even admitted on the record that they are making arrests based on how you look. Based on how you look. How you look. That's the baseline. They're not targeting violent criminals or gang members. They're arresting tamale vendors, and delivery men and shaking down families. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Tom Homan said they were targeting the worst of the worst criminals. They lied, and they continue to lie. 60% of the individuals that ICE has taken in Illinois this year have no criminal convictions of any kind. ICE is running around the loop harassing people for not being white. Just a year ago, that was illegal in the United States. Now, ICE is making it commonplace. That's not making America great. In any other country, if federal agents fired upon journalists and protesters when unprovoked, what would we call it? If federal agents marched down busy streets, harassing civilians and demanding their papers, what would we say? I don't think we'd have any trouble calling it what it is: authoritarianism. So let's not pretend it's something else when it happens in our American cities. The MAGA Republican-supported invasion of Portland and Chicago and LA and Washington, D.C. is not making us any safer. Instead, it is putting our people in danger. This is an attack on neighborhoods, on lawful residents, on U.S. citizens. That's not preventing crime, as Donald Trump claims. That's threatening public safety. But as I've said many times, for Donald Trump and the MAGAs in Congress, this is not about fighting crime or about public safety. This is about sowing fear and intimidation and division among Americans. It was about creating a pretext to send armed military troops into our communities. This is about consolidating power in Donald Trump's hands. What he plans to do with that power, now or during the 2026 elections, should worry all of us. When you add to that the Trump administration's effort to label as dangerous free speech critical of him, White House senior staff calling the Democratic Party fascist, the Trump-appointed FCC chair threatening to revoke broadcast licenses and the approval of a merger in order to silence late-night comedians, Trump's threats to jail political opponents, you cannot call this anything except an attack on the Constitution of the United States. But let's also talk about what he's doing to the economy with all these attacks on our communities. Our small businesses suffer when our residents and visitors who are shopping and eating are made to feel unsafe by the jackbooted thugs roaming around a peaceful downtown. Parents are now scared to send their kids to school for fear the troops will grab their children. Students are afraid they'll come home and find their parents have been disappeared by ICE. This is no way to live. We are here together today, elected officials, business leaders, the faith community, law enforcement, educators, community organizations, united in our opposition to these flagrant abuses of power by the federal government. With one voice, we are telling this unwarranted and unconstitutional occupation by ICE and potentially by military troops to get out of Chicago. You are not helping us. Over the past month, I've been all across the city and all across the region, from Bronzeville to Austin to Pilsen to Little Village, talking to residents and to local business owners. Not one of them has asked for armed military troops in our streets. They have all said loudly that there is no emergency here on the ground that requires the deployment of military troops or the use of military tactics. I refuse to stay silent about this and let the slow encroachment of our freedoms and liberties continue unabated. The state of Illinois and all of us will continue to fight this with everything that we have. So, people of Illinois, We need your help. Get out your cell phones, record and narrate what you see. Put it on social media. Peacefully ask for badge numbers and identification. Speak up for your neighbors. We need to let the world know that this is happening and that we won't stand for it. I was surprised and pleased to see that a federal agent in New York was put on leave after he was caught throwing a woman to the ground. Good. Good. That would never have happened, though, if it wasn't on camera. So keep documenting. It could make a world of difference for someone, perhaps for all of us. I look forward to taking your questions, and right now I'd like to hand the microphone over to Mayor Brandon Johnson. Mayor.
Thank you, Governor, of course. Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm grateful to all of the elected leaders here, the community, business, and faith leaders that are joining us today. Many Chicagoans were shocked and appalled to see videos of heavily armed, masked federal agents in our streets yesterday. The reality is that this stunt has nothing to do with public safety. This is about politics, money, and power. The president is using his militarized force the exact way he intended, to advance his political goals. He wants to militarize our cities, whether that's through ICE or through the National Guard or the United States Army or Armed Forces. He wants to provoke conflict so that he can use this as a pretext to send even more federal agents into our city. What we saw yesterday was an absolute disgrace. Families, visitors, everyday Chicagoans were out enjoying our city, and they were met with dozens of heavily armed federal agents aiming to strike fear in our communities. They targeted street vendors and construction workers, just trying to make an honest living. They made a little girl act as a translator as they took her family into custody. These are heartbreaking scenes that have nothing to do with making our city safer. My question to these masked, heavily armed individuals is simple. What could you possibly need an automatic weapon for? The only plausible explanation is that their aim is not to carry out their duties, but instead strike fear in our communities. If you are following the law, if you are in accordance with the Constitution, if you have a criminal warrant, then there is no reason to cover your face. This comes on the heels of the revelation that was reported on MSNBC that Tom Homan, the so-called border czar, accepted a $50,000 bribe from undercover FBI agents in exchange for lucrative detention center contracts. So let's call it what it is. Tom Homan sold out the American people for $50,000 in cash. And that's why I'm calling on the federal government to appoint an independent investigator to review every single contract in the city of Chicago, the county and the state, related to any ICE detention centers. The people have a right to know if these contracts are legitimate or if they were granted as a result of outright bribery and corruption. As of last week, 72% of those held in ICE detention have no criminal record. And of those with a criminal record, many are for traffic violations and misdemeanors. The Trump administration's detention campaign is not for public safety, it is for profit. More than 90% of the immigration detention centers are run by private and for-profit corporations. The Trump administration has already engaged in no-bid contracts with private prison contractors across the United States. Executives at private prison firms are calling this a gold rush, as their stocks have soared by as much as 80%. In May, the CEO of a private prison corporation told investors, and this is a quote, "Truly one of the most exciting periods in the history of the company." One company estimated that they could make as much as $400 million of taxpayer money per year from private detention. Another said that it could make as much as $1 billion. In addition, in additional revenue, the two largest private prison corporations gave President Donald Trump at least $2.8 million for his re-election campaign. And this is the agency that Trump and Republicans just handed $170 billion, a blank check with little to no oversight. The money that Republicans gave to ICE is there's more funding given to ICE in this last budget that has been allocated for police departments at state and local governments in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia combined. Let me say that again. Trump gave his personal militarized force more money than all other local and state police funding combined. And the guy they put in charge of that funding was bought for $50,000 in cash. They are lining their own pockets and the pockets of the executives of small number corporations, to a small number of corporations. I've spoken with parents in Pilsen, Little Village, spoken to business owners on Devon Street, elders in Uptown who are too scared to take their children to school. We're losing business, and they're too afraid to even attend church because of their legal status. They're afraid of the reckless actions that they have seen. And this is not being tough or patriotic. To throw a crying mother to the floor who just wanted to be reunited with her children, it's abominable. It's not law and order to body slam a 79-year-old business owner, an American citizen, for trying to produce the papers of his employees. And there's nothing brave about firing pepper bullets with chemical agents at a Chicago CBS reporter for simply showing up to do her job. Greg Bovino, who spends countless taxpayer dollars on TikTok videos of himself, was in charge of the operation in Los Angeles, where a 15-year-old kid, an American citizen with disabilities, was handcuffed and held at gunpoint by ICE. His family is now suing. By the time this is over, there will be hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars wasted in settlements related to the excessive use of force and the unconstitutional actions of this administration. So again, let's make this very clear. This is not about public safety. This is not even about immigration. This is the continuation of the Trump administration's war on the poor. They have cut food assistance, they have cut Medicaid, they have cut violence prevention funding. They have made life harder and more dangerous for poor and working people across this country. They have declared war on poor on behalf of the ultra-rich, and so they can simply funnel our tax dollars to a small handful of billionaires. So we have to make sure that we continue to show our support for the people of this city and for this country. In closing, at a time when we are cutting hundreds of millions of dollars from healthcare, public health, housing, and defunding public education, manufacturing austerity, I'll say that plainly, the Trump administration is worsening poverty at the same time as declaring war on the poor. This is an untrustworthy, corrupt, and out-of-control administration that is doing everything in their power to foment chaos in our cities. Whether it's in Portland, Los Angeles, or Chicago, we cannot accept the militarization of our cities. We will continue to stand united as a city, as a county, as a state, and local villages to reject any attempts to militarize our cities. I want to be very clear, what we saw this Sunday is not unique. As the governor has indicated, this is happening in villages like Broadview and other places across this country. And so we have to make sure that this is not the last time we express our unified voice to ensure that we protect the interests of all people. And with that, I will turn it over to our Attorney General, Kwame Raoul.
Thank you, Mayor. Governor, thanks for convening us. From masked federal agents using tear gas against people exercising their First Amendment rights in Broadview to mask uniformed federal agents carrying automatic rifles as they menace people in downtown Chicago. In downtown Chicago, which is well patrolled by both the Chicago Police Department and the Cook County Sheriff's Office. The images we have seen in Chicago area look more like a region under siege. than they do America in peacetime. If it was not clear from before, it should be plain now. The president's goal is to sow chaos, instill fear in Chicagoans and the American people at large. It's also clear that this has never been about fighting crime. Let me state clearly, I am not averse to the President of the United States wanting to be helpful in fighting crime in American cities. I'm not averse to federal law enforcement agencies contributing to fighting crime in American cities. In fact, we have had a great history of collaboration with those federal law enforcement agencies that are trained to fight crimes on the local level. However, if the president were sincere about fighting crime, he would devote more resources to those federal law enforcement agencies with whom we have partnered with, which we have had a great working relationship with, instead of either cutting their budgets or reassigning their agents to doing immigration work instead of crime-fighting work. He would not be cutting funding from community violence interruption. He would not be depriving victims of crime of the resources they need based on unrelated immigration criteria. Instead, he's federalizing the state of Oregon's National Guard. And as the governor laid out, he's following the same pattern that he followed in Oregon, and we just received a memo. Same steps that were followed in Oregon. The mobilization of the military isn't just an ineffective strategy to address crime. It is illegal. That is why I stand in solidarity with my colleague, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield. We've been in contact over the weekend as well as earlier this morning, who filed a lawsuit yesterday against the Trump administration's mobilization of the National Guard there. The 10th Amendment preserves states' sovereignty to enforce state laws as they see fit. The Posse Comitatus Act, as I've stated before, limits the federal government's ability to use the military for domestic law enforcement. A judge in California recognized that fact earlier this month. And the militia clauses of the United States Constitution give Congress sole authority to decide what factual circumstances allow the president to federalize the National Guard. They don't exist here. The president has failed to establish that any of the legal prerequisites exist for his efforts to federalize the Guard. Which is why litigation challenging these efforts is now pending in multiple courts. And if the evidence follows, if the pattern follows what we've seen in Oregon, he should expect a legal challenge here as well. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, we're filing a lawsuit challenging the administration's unlawful reallocation of more than $100 million in public safety and disaster relief funds away from Illinois and other states around the country. These funds, under the Homeland Security Grant Program, help states protect against acts of terrorism and are a critical source of money for networks of police departments, fire departments, emergency services, and public works departments across the country. In this latest action by the administration, the cut to Illinois funds alone is over $30 million. None of this chaos and none of these acts make us safer. To be clear, our U.S. Constitution is still the law of the land. It is generally unlawful for people to be subject to detention or search without probable cause or reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime has been committed. Due process is still required when someone is deprived of their liberty. The First Amendment still protects the right to free speech and peaceably and lawfully assemble, which includes the right to express one's views even if those views are critical of government policies and how they're being carried out. That said, it is important to note that protesters must also comply with applicable laws. For example, the First Amendment does not allow for protesters to assault, intimidate, interfere with an officer of the United States government or local government while they are engaged in their performance, or to obstruct or impede federal civil immigration vehicles or enforcement operation. Clearly, this deployment of the federal officers into our well-policed central business district is meant to provoke Chicagoans. What the president is hoping to do is foment chaos by inciting out-of-control protests. So I urge Illinoisans, don't take the bait. There is no emergency in Chicago. Don't help him create one. Exercise your First Amendment rights, but do so peacefully, without violence or destruction of property. If you see what you believe to be civil rights being violated, use your phone or camera to document it, to bear witness. My office is monitoring these images, and so are legal and civil rights organizations around the city, the state, and the nation. I'm here to say that no president can flout the Constitution. The rule of law matters in the state of Illinois, and we will not hesitate to preserve it. At this time, I'd like to pass the mic to County Board President Tony Pretwinkle.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to thank you all for being here today and for showing your support. My county, Cook County, is home to more than 5 million people, many of whom are immigrants who came here seeking a better life for themselves and their families. Yet today, many of our friends, families, and neighbors no longer feel safe at home, at work, or in public spaces. Federal decisions to militarize ICE activity have set a dangerous precedent. ICE agents are wearing masks, breaking into homes, and carrying weapons in downtown areas. These actions have created fear and chaos across our region and are designed to intimidate our residents. ICE agents have fired tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets at protesters and journalists in Broadview. In Chicago, agents in tactical gear are carrying long guns on our streets. None of this creates safety or security. It only spreads fear. On behalf of Cook County, I stand here today to call for an end to these shameless, appalling tactics. And I want to make clear, as a welcoming county, we will continue to work every day to ensure that every resident feels safe, respected, and valued. Our residents do not want to see masked individuals storming into neighborhoods, terrorizing families, and kidnapping people off our streets. They do not want to see an undocumented father with no criminal record fatally shot in their community. These extreme, un-American, and discriminatory actions by federal agents ordered by national leaders are cruel and unacceptable. Instead of leadership that unites us and invests in people, we see the emboldening of unchecked power. It's clear that federal leaders have no respect for our laws, our values, and are working to undermine the very fabric of our society. The lack of human decency shown toward immigrant families who contribute greatly to our culture, our economy, and our communities, is indefensible. And it doesn't stop there. We've seen similar attacks on citizens as well. Plainclothes agents, unmarked cars, and the refusal to provide identification are not signs of transparency or accountability. They're acts of cowardice. Cook County will not tolerate injustice or the inhumane treatment of people who came here seeking safety and the chance to build a better life. That's why I, along with the state and local leaders standing here today, called for accountability and justice. We must ensure that federal agencies act lawfully and respect the rights of all of our people. And now I'd like to bring to the podium Senator Villa.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Karina Villa. I am the state senator of the 25th Senate District. I serve as the Senate chair of the Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus, which is made up of 17 legislators from across the state. We are here to say Illinoisans will stand together and our state will not be intimidated. Donald Trump has militarized agents. He has sent them to our suburbs like my hometown of West Chicago, to Broadview, and now to our peaceful streets of downtown Chicago. These masked agents are marching through our neighborhoods, masked in technical gear and intimidating families and neighbors who are an essential part of our lives. Let's remember what you have seen. Parents attacked on their way to work, students facing ICE agents on the way to schools, protesters are shot with chemical munitions, the press being arrested. What we are seeing is the First Amendment rights, our First Amendment rights, being eroded by an authoritarian administration determined to dismantle dissent. This is not safety. This is persecution. The Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus stands united with Governor Pritzker and leaders at every level, demanding answers about the stolen life of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez and so-called Operation Midway Blitz. We demand that every Illinoisan receive the right to due process, medical care, and access to legal counsel. We are delivering on these fundamental rights with the Trust Act and my Safe Schools bill, and we will continue to legislate to make sure that Illinois remains the safest and most welcoming state in our country. Let us be absolutely clear. No president, no agent, no badge is above the Constitution. The powerful display of solidarity from our neighbors and allies on the ground has been a fierce display of resistance and courage. It has shown the true strength of our state. We will not cower. We will not cooperate with cruelty. We will continue to lend our voices to those that the Trump administration is trying to silence. We will continue to record and report ICE activity in our communities, and we will continue to stand up for every vulnerable person in our state. To every immigrant watching, you are not invisible, and you are not alone. We see you, we value you, and we will defend you. These are our cities, and this is our state. We will not back down. Ahora en español. Buenas tardes. Soy Karina Villa, senadora estatal del Distrito 25 y líder del Caucus Legislativo Latino en Illinois. Somos compuestos de 17 legisladores en todo el estado. Estamos aquí para decirle a los residentes de Illinois que estamos unidos y esto es nuestro estado y no nos vamos a dejar intimidar. Donald Trump ha mandado agentes militarizados a nuestros suburbios, como mi ciudad de West Chicago, a Broadview y ahora dentro de las calles de Chicago. Estos agentes enmascarados y armados Caminan por nuestros vecindarios con equipo táctico, intimidando a las familias y vecinos que son una parte esencial de nuestra comunidad y de nuestras vidas. Recuerden lo que han visto. Padres atacados caminando al trabajo, estudiantes enfrentándose a agentes de ICE cuando van a la escuela, manifestantes gaseados y disparados con municiones químicas, periodistas arrestados y nuestros derechos constitucionales debilitados por un gobierno federal autoritario decidido a silenciar a quienes piensan diferente. Esto no es seguridad, esto es persecución. El caucus legislativo latino de Illinois se mantiene unido con el gobernador Pritzker y con líderes a través del estado de Illinois a todos niveles para exigir respuestas sobre la vida robada de Silverio Villegas González y sobre la llamada Operación Midway Blitz. Exigimos que toda persona en Illinois tenga derecho al debido proceso, atención médica y acceso a representación legal. Estamos cumpliendo con estos derechos fundamentales a través de la ley Trust y mi proyecto de ley Las Escuelas Seguras. Seguiremos legislando para que Illinois sea el estado más seguro y acogedor en el país para inmigrantes. Que quede absolutamente claro. Ningún presidente, ningún agente, ninguna insignia está por encima de la Constitución. La poderosa muestra de solidaridad de nuestras comunidades y aliados ha sido una valiente expresión de resistencia y coraje. Ha demostrado la verdadera fuerza de nuestro Estado. No nos vamos a acobardar, no nos vamos a colaborar con la crueldad. Seguiremos alzando nuestras voces por quienes la administración de Trump intentan silenciar. Seguiremos documentando y reportando la actividad de ICE en nuestras comunidades. Y seguiremos defendiendo a cada persona vulnerable en nuestro estado, a cada inmigrante que nos está viendo. No eres invisible, no estás solo. Te vemos, te valoramos y te vamos a defender. Estas son nuestras ciudades. Este es nuestro estado. No nos vamos a rendir. Y ahora le paso el micrófono a Ere Rendón. Gracias.
Buenas tardes. My name is Erendira Rendon. I'm Vice President of Immigrant Justice at the Resurrection Project. For 29 days, the immigrant community, particularly the Latino community, has been under attack. This weekend marked another dangerous escalation in the assault that is happening in our communities. DHS has admitted to members of the press that they are making enforcement decisions based on racial profiling, based on class, based on how we dress, and based on the language we speak. If you look like me, you are in danger. On Sunday, in back of the yards, ICE officers violently arrested 3 U.S. citizens on baseless charges simply for exercising their constitutional right to free speech. DHS terrorizes and showcases our pain on social media. These high-visibility enforcement actions are designed to feed a media narrative that says that immigrants are the threat. But we know the truth. Immigrants power our economy. Immigrants keep prices down. Immigrants feed us. Immigrants build your homes. Immigrants, we love our families. Whew.
It's all right.
Take your time.
An attack on us is an attack on all of America.
That's right.
This weekend's attack on workers and on families. Children were arrested this weekend. It's just the pattern of escalation that we've been seeing in our communities. It's just that it happened downtown. Right now in Broadview, there are 200 people in a place that is not a detention center. They are being held in inhumane conditions. There are no beds. There are no showers. There is limited food. They order children's meals from Subway to eat. We are not allowed to speak to any of our clients that are held in that facility. It is a black hole, and people go missing for days. People are being forced to sign their voluntary departure forms, and their families are being denied access to them. DHS agencies continue to act with no respect for the law, defying court orders and attacking our community members, our faith institutions, and everybody who is protesting. There are over 60 organizations actively working to defend our communities. The Illinois Coalition for Immigrant Refugee Rights, leading all rapid response in the hotline. The rapid response folks are our heroes. The National Immigrant Justice Center, who last week filed a lawsuit to uphold the Constitution, and dozens more. Since September 1st at the Resurrection Project, we have received over 320 requests for legal assistance. These are undocumented residents, green card holders, and 2 dreamers with DACA. And now even citizens are being arrested. This should concern every single person. I am grateful to Senator Pritzker and to all of our elected leaders who have made Illinois a safer place for us to live, even though right now we are under attack. And our message to all immigrant community continues to be the same. Primero, les quiero asegurar que también nosotros somos inmigrantes. También nosotros nos preocupamos por nuestras familias. Visit IllinoisImmigrationInfo.org for up-to-date information. If you have, and you can also call the hotline, the ICE Family Support Hotline at 1-855-HELP-MY-FAMILY if you see ICE. Buenas tardes, me llamo Erendira Rendón, soy vicepresidenta de Justicia para el Inmigrante en Proyecto Resurrección. Durante 29 días, la comunidad inmigrante y muy en particular la comunidad latina ha estado bajo ataque. Este fin de semana marcó otro incremento en el asalto a nuestras comunidades. DHS, el Departamento de Homeland Security, ha admitido que lo único que necesitan para parar a una persona es basado en cómo se ven, basado en cómo se visten, basado en los carros que manejamos y en el idioma que hablamos. El domingo, en el barrio de las Empacadoras, agentes de ICE arrestaron a 3 ciudadanos americanos simplemente por protegernos y ejercer su derecho de libertad de expresión. DHS está aterrorizando a nuestras comunidades y al mismo tiempo está documentando nuestro dolor y poniéndolo en las presas en las medias sociales. Estas acciones son un ataque a los inmigrantes, son un ataque a la comunidad latina. Lo que están tratando de hacer es crear una narrativa que los inmigrantes son peligrosos. Pero nosotros sabemos quiénes somos. Los inmigrantes damos de comer. Los inmigrantes...
You got it.
That's all right. Take your time.
Los inmigrantes construimos sus casas. Los inmigrantes limpiamos sus casas. Y a pesar de estos momentos que estamos pasando, tenemos que seguir recordando y ejerciendo nuestros derechos. Hay más de 60 organizaciones que están trabajando lo más que se pueda para poder protegernos. La Coalición Pro Derechos de Inmigrantes y Refugiados de Illinois está liderando toda la respuesta rápida con los héroes que están saliendo y tratando de sacar a ICE de nuestras comunidades. El National Immigrant Justice Center metió una demanda la semana pasada para poder defender nuestros derechos. En Proyecto Resurrección hemos recibido más de 320 solicitudes para defensa legal. Estoy agradecida con el gobernador Pritzker y con tus líderes y nuestros líderes elegidos de Illinois que están haciendo todo lo posible por defendernos en contra de este ataque que estamos viviendo. Nuestro mensaje sigue el mismo. Si ves a ICE, llama la ayuda de ICER. Y también puedes visitar a la página illinoisimmigrationinfo.org para más información. Muchísimas gracias y voy a terminar con los nombres de algunas personas que esta semana fueron detenidos. Este mensaje es para Santiago, Manuel, Mara, José, Judith, Yuridia, Marcos, Juan. Estamos con ustedes. Gracias. Now I'd like to welcome Jack Lavin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Jack Lavin, President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, which represents business of all sizes and sectors across Chicago. First, I want to thank Governor Pritzker for your leadership in bringing this united front of government, business, labor, civic, faith, and community leaders together today. I've long spoke to our shared goal of improving public safety and reducing violence and the importance of true collaboration in that effort. Chicago has made real progress thanks to the leadership of Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson, President Preckwinkle, and the collaboration of business leaders, local law enforcement, violence prevention organizations, and our community and faith leaders. That progress is important, not just for families and neighborhoods, but for businesses, jobs, economic growth in every corner of our city. We've been investing in real collaborative solutions, investments by the state and the city in jobs for youth and community violence intervention programs, working closely with the Chicago Police Department, the Cook County State's Attorney, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and Senate President Harmon, supporting programs like CRED, who are working every day to reduce violence and expand opportunity, and partnering with a coalition of business groups on initiatives to create jobs and programs for youth and community violence intervention programs. We have a lot more work to do, but these collaborations are making a real difference, and they reflect what actually works: constructive partnerships. That is why the sudden deployment of federal Border Patrol agents to Chicago's downtown yesterday is such a concern. We've seen in other cities how the presence of federal agents can needlessly disrupt communities, create uncertainty, and hurt economies. They scare people away from restaurants, cultural events, and our downtown, the heart of Chicago's economic engine. They deter tourists from visiting our city and employees from going to work. The needless uncertainty and unpredictability they bring discourages consumer activity, especially hurting small businesses that depend on steady foot traffic. Businesses in Chicago are already dealing with so much pressure and economic uncertainty between inflation, tariffs, fiscal issues, and other rising costs. The last thing they need is another element of uncertainty to add to their challenges. Let me be clear. Everyone shares the same goal: safer streets, stronger neighborhoods, and a thriving economy. The business community is open to partnership with the federal government, as we have always been. But partnership means working together, planning together, listening to community voices, and supporting the efforts that are already moving us in the right direction. Yesterday's actions were not any of these things, and further escalation like this would be unnecessary. Chicago is a world-class city. I'm going to say that again. Chicago is a world-class city, and any other narrative is false. We are a city of incredible beauty and unmatched strengths, a workforce and talent that are second to none, amazing transportation infrastructure, airports, and educational institutions, and an affordable and great quality of life with our restaurants and cultural institutions. We are on the path to growth and safety through collaboration. Yesterday's actions undermine that progress, create a false narrative, and undercut our shared goals. It risks slowing the very economic activity we need to keep this city moving forward. The best path forward is clear: constructive partnerships and collaboration, not distraction and disruption. We welcome federal engagement, but only if it builds on the trust and collaboration already underway. That is how we will continue to make Chicago safer, stronger, and more prosperous for everyone, and how we will build on the world-class city that we already are. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain with Live Free Illinois, where we organize with faith communities across the state. The federal government has persistently poured billions into harming and victimizing U.S. citizens and undocumented survivors alike. Let's be clear. In this country, we have constitutionally protected freedom of speech. To target, track, and criminalize protesters, people exercising their right to speak out against injustice, is nothing less than an attempt to drag this nation toward an authoritarian rule. And hear me when I say, we will not allow it. This is not about safety. This is not about immigration. This is about wolves in sheep's clothing, quoting scripture while pushing a dangerous Christian authoritarian agenda. Very similar to another Christian nationalist leader named Vladimir Putin. This agenda is nothing more than a strategy designed to divide, dominate, and destroy. Every Illinoisan, every American must see the truth. This is not a migrant issue. This is a battle for the very soul of our country. So let us rise, let us resist. The weapons of our warfare are not of human origin. They are mighty through God to pull down strongholds. Let us protect one another and defeat hate with unshakable love. Because as Pastor Michael McBride would say, a disorganized truth cannot defeat an organized lie. So let's organize, let's unify, let's mobilize, and together we will beat back evil, defend our democracy, and claim the future that our children deserve. Thank you, and with that being said, I will return it back to Governor Pritzker.
From Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Right now on the news at 4, Governor Pritzker says 100 military troops are being deployed to Illinois.
Chicago alders blasting the city's teachers union for a social media post.
And stay in line, the Cook County Sheriff's Department is taking to the skies to keep drivers